intersect. You can have a product that users want, but your technology, your bridge, right? Your idea is not able to make is not able to address the problem that they have. Or you can have a very nice technology idea, but it's a good to have. It's something that you have created for a problem you have, but there is no large market for it, right? Or you have a market, but you're putting something that people don't want. So it is only when you have this intersection of these three that you can truly say you have innovation. So going back to the example I said, in terms of how I describe innovation, it is the successful exploitation of ideas, and you have to find this intersecting. So what are the dynamics of an innovation-friendly environment? And I put six factors for us to consider. Now, first off, it is that and when we think of a lot of the innovations, and Nigeria is such a right place for innovation because there are so many economic and social challenges that we have. But if there's not the political will to enable and scale these innovations, it will just end somewhere. I'm saying this also from experience. Faith Foundation has 3 divisions. There's our School of Entrepreneurship, there's our Research Institute, then there's our Philanthropy Unit. During the pandemic, we actually invested in one of the largest public research institutions in Nigeria, health research institutions. And there was an innovation that they launched. And honestly, if we invested for them to be able to have a proof of concept, to be able to say, oh, we can do this testing thing, and it worked. So there are people who can do that. But the problem we had was the political will to then put the political will behind the institution to then push it. So you can have innovative, friendly environments, the management of innovation and technology units within UNILAG and all of that. But if the UNILAG Senate is not behind it, if for instance, the federal government is not behind it, if NAFDAC is not behind you, if you are doing things, let me say in the health space, Ministry of Health is not behind you, or is in education or in communication, and all the key regulatory institutions are not behind you, it will not work. And again, like I said, I'm saying this from practical experience. So there has to be the political will, either within the department, the institutions, or the structure that it is, to be able to push, to be able to guarantee and enable that. There also has to be the economic drivers for it, right? Because a lot of innovation requires time to test it, right? To test the idea, to test the theory, to push it out in the market, have a minimum viable product, and give that. So there has to be economic factors to be able to fund and finance it. I will say social and cultural together. The example the first speaker gave on that hand bracelet in India was so important, because sometimes, and particularly with health and education innovations, sometimes you're dealing with cultural barriers, right? Even look at vaccine adoption. Even before COVID, you know, there are certain parts of the country where vaccine adoption was a problem. If you think of polio, because of perceptions or because of cultural factors that did not make people adaptable and acceptable and appreciative of the technology. So an innovation-friendly environment also needs to be able to do that. Change management also has to be culturally and socially acceptable. Then there has to be the technology to enable its scale, right? A lot of our businesses in Faith Foundation, for instance, under our Faith School, they have a lot of agricultural innovations, but they don't have the technology, they don't have the hardware technology to scale these innovations to reach thousands of people. So right now, maybe it reach tens or hundreds of people, but to be able to reach hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people, you need to be able to have the technology that allows it scale. Flutterways is in the market for having a $3 billion market cap. If they don't have the investment to scale that technology, they won't be able to reach the millions of users that use their platforms across. Last but not the least, again, going back to the business hat for me, is the market. There has to be a market. There has to be customer segment. There has to be a large representative, viable size of market, of consumers, individuals, institutions, whatever your target market is, that will then take on, that would allow you to even test that, and then will then take up on that. So when we're thinking of an innovation-friendly environment, for me, it has to cover, almost like when you use the pestle analysis, for those of you who are in business here, and then more for that. I think the other thing I have to add here will be timing. So there are lots of health innovations now that are scaling because of the pandemic, because the pandemic has sort of put health tech, health innovation at the center, and saying that we need to find innovations that address public health crisis. So timing would be another thing that's also here, because if you had, for instance, some sort of vaccine methodology or innovation or whatever 10 years ago that is looking at zoonotic diseases or large-scale pandemic, it may not have taken on because the timing is also appropriate. So timing, I would also add in terms of this. I wanted to share a few data points with you before I round up, because for me, I feel a strong handshake in innovation and entrepreneurship. I think a lot of the challenges we have, particularly within our tertiary institutions, is that our researchers are very scientific, but they're not entrepreneurial. So one of the challenges we always give is that, you as a researcher, you as an innovator have to put on your entrepreneurial hat onto it. There's a research we did recently. We launched it about 2 months ago, and you can download it on the link that it's provided. And what we did was to say, okay, let's look at what are the various factors that can help to foster entrepreneurial innovation in Nigeria. We surveyed about 7,100 people across 26 states. And we then looked at it across these different dynamics. How does this innovation perform from a business perspective? How do the innovators perceive opportunities? Do they see these opportunities as things that will bridge the gap and also help to solve issues? Are there even issues to be solved? Is there a digital technology adoption, whether hardware, whether software, that really helps to take and accelerate this? And what are the skills the researchers, the innovators, and the teams around them have? So whether the research skills, the knowledge of the space they're innovating in, the knowledge of being able to take this to the market, right? The knowledge of being able to advocate with the target community and all of that, what are the skills required? And then also the enabling environment to do that, because at all said and good, again, going back to what I said about political will, is being able to have the environment that enables, that sustains and accelerates it, right? And one of the things we did, again, there's a larger report on this, you can download it, but also looking at this indexes. We even did the indexes across 26 states. Lagos obviously is included, and there are quite a lot of states, and you can go to the report and it gives you a detail. But again, what do we see? We see that the performance of these entrepreneurial innovations and the business environment scored and ranked low. So yes, people are ambitious, they're positive about so many opportunities. We see so many ideas. I'm always excited and passionate about young people, and not so young people again, who really have ideas, but ideas are a dime a dozen. If we are not able to bring a market lens to it and ensure that they're viable, not every idea will be viable, but really being able to find the ideas that will be most viable and can scale, really are important. So again, putting on the business hat and also the policy enablement support for it. I think, yes. So this is my second to the last slide. One of the things I've recommended a research, so we have researchers here, I've recommended a research report for you. The other thing I recommend is also a book that you should read. Again, the research report is focused on Nigeria. This book is also co-written by a Nigerian. And one of the things you can look at, again, UNILAG, I'm sure they're familiar with the Christensen Institute in Harvard universities. And they do a lot of things, Harvard University, and they do a lot of things around innovation. Please, please, and please, if you're on this call, right, and you're thinking about creating a sustainable innovation, go and look for this book. It's called The Prosperity Paradox. Because the idea, again, is that you have to, there are all sorts of innovations. Some innovations help to maintain and sustain the status quo, right? Some innovations help to improve efficiency. But if you look at the two examples of the Nigerians I shared earlier on, we want the innovations that are sustainable, right? And that we need. If you think of the problems we have now economically and socially, we need market creating innovations They're simple, easy to scale. They are just simple problems. It's not complex things. If you look at the problem of blood, problem of counterfeit, all of us, most of us in one way or the other have had this, right? You have a new customer segment. These innovations, your innovations that are sustainable have to be able to create jobs, full-time jobs, part-time jobs, impact their value chain, and enable development, accelerate growth and enable development. And this book, The Prosperity Paradox, really, really breaks it down. And it helps you to think through, how do I center my innovation? How do I know if it's a social-driven innovation or it's a market-driven innovation? And how can I really sort of sift that out? What are the parameters and tools and guidelines for it? So I'll recommend that to you. So last word that I'm going to leave, and I use sort of like the 5 C's on how to do this. If you're here and you have an idea, product, service, technology, all of that, and you're saying that, how do I expand? I think for the school, and I'm happy we're having these conversations for the university, being able to bring people who can share, who can provide hands-on experiential learning. Gone are the days where people just sit in the lab and stay there. I know some universities in the US now that, they even fund researches that really show market potential. If it's just going to end up as another research report somewhere, it's less likely to be funded. If we even think about, when we think about Silicon Valley, right? How did Silicon Valley come to be? If you trace the roots back to 60, 70, 80 years ago, from post the World War I, World War II, where there was a strong investment in Stanford University and a lot of the schools around that. And who was making that investment is the Department of Defense in the US. In fact, if you look at a lot of countries around the world, the most places where you find innovation would usually have to do with defense. So military, army, navy, marines, they usually have the highest levels of technology. And even if you think, when people talk about the origins of the internet and computer, it's for people to be able to communicate with each other, in a very safe and secure way. What am I saying? It's that, we really need to be able to provide practical content for our innovators, for our researchers to have hands-on experiential learning. The second for me is connecting, and I'm really glad this is happening because this is evidence of that. The triple helix approach, academia, government, industry, right? Those 3 things have to work. You can't be an innovator that is not connecting directly with your market, with the industry you're targeting, getting feedback. If anything, it is the market that even really tells you what are the gaps in the market, what do customers need, what is going to thrive. So those 3 circles I showed, it's really the market that defines for you. So whatever space you're in, you really have to connect with the private sector in your space to understand, to sit, to engage with them, and all of that. In fact, what we're seeing now is also a lot, this has happened in developing countries, but what you're seeing increasingly now is that even private sector companies are domiciling innovations within their companies, because unlike before, the academia is not catching up as far as it should. And so the third one for me is around convening, policy and regulatory advocacy. Where is UNILAG in the Nigerian Economic Summit Group, for instance? I know they have a triple helix roundtable. I'm sure you are part of it because the NUC is part of that. How is UNILAG also ensuring that outside